Do you think Andrew Tate is guilty? But what do you think about Jordan? We're both big fans of Jordan Peterson. What do you think of them taking back his clinical license? Maybe.
This severely worries. This sets a very, very dark tone.
Whether we think our opinions are original or not, our opinions have been formed by the information that's put in front of us. If you borrowed the laptop of a flat earther for a month, you would start to believe that the world was flat. And you could have been the biggest denier prior to having his laptop.
That was the toughest physical thing I've done, the closest I've come to quitting, in the most confusing environment ever, because I found myself on the second ascent up the mountain on my own. So I toy between, do I want to just try and get a little bit bigger, or do I want to get DSL again? And I always end up leaning towards the DSL, but I don't know. But I have to think about function and fun in my training. Attend my first ayahuasca retreat.
Just quickly before we get into the full show, for any of you who's watched this podcast before, you will know that I am super passionate about this podcast and getting on the most interesting guests to help you get better results with your fat loss, your business, your life, and your coaching skills. But at the moment, 85% of you who watch this channel aren't subscribed to the channel. The bigger the channel gets, the better the guests get, the more high production value the show gets, as well as the clips get. So if you're watching this, please, can you click subscribe, like, comment, improve interaction so YouTube know we are a channel to be reckoned with. And then we can take over, and then I'm coming for you, Joe Rogan.
So Rob, Happy New Year.
Right back to you, sir.
How was your Christmas? How was your New Year?
Non-eventful, quiet, and that's how I like it. If it was busy and party-fueled and chaotic, I would not be very happy right now. That's how I spend my Christmas and my New Year. I go a little bit hermit. I go under the radar. I do chilled things that I enjoy, but I don't have to worry about the involvement of other people. That's pretty much it.
Well, as we spoke about off air, I had the exact opposite. Christmas and New Year in chaotic Vietnam, amazing country.
Yeah.
But I spoke about my New Year, where we were pretty much in a rooftop bar assigned to what I'm pretty certain was a working girl that didn't speak any English, who just sat with us and texted all night. I tried to speak to her on Google Translate. Very strange experience, but definitely a memorable Christmas and New Year. So I wanted to use this episode, first one of the year, first one I've recorded of the year, obviously second one that's gone out, but as a review of 2022. What's we obviously do fitness-related stuff, but also off-topic stuff. So let's talk about our years. Let's talk about the biggest stories of the year, because it's been a really big year in general in terms of the world. And let's talk about how the year started, and then what we're expecting for 2023. As we said off air, though, I do want to speak about this first week already of the new year, because it's been an eventful one, right? We're barely into it. And this is going to be the point where half of the audience go knuckle in and half of the audience go, right, I'm tuning out of this podcast. I'm off, yeah. Do you think Andrew Tate is guilty?
It's a very, very tough one. I think it's definitely a hit job using something that he might otherwise have not ever been charged for that possibly did happen. I can't say definitely happened because I'm not a law expert. I'm not a law enforcer. I don't know Andrew Tate. I don't really know his history. I have no acquaintances that are acquaintances of his. There is no connection there. Maybe a 6-degree thing, maybe, but there's no connection there. Who am I to say he 100% is guilty or not? But obviously, he has been arrested and put under this 30-day pre-trial detention thing, which sounds extreme and doesn't really sound like a common thing. I can't say I've ever heard of that before.
Wouldn't that suggest he's innocent a little bit? Wouldn't that suggest that he's innocent? Because if they really felt they had something on him, he'd be in prison for 30 days. Here we go, just roam the country. It looks like, stay here, we're going to dig, and if we find anything more, we will come and get you.
Yeah. And they've done, they've seized all his stuff, all his cars.
All his stuff, and everyone's talking about the cars. That's all anyone cares about.
So Greta must be happy that the cars are no longer on the road. But It's an odd thing to watch because obviously the media are really doubling down on this, and everyone. This is the first division of 2023. This is the first big division event, and it's on Andrew Tate. Whereas
Who
last year,
else?
well, of course, who else? Whereas last year, I think the big division was still kind of talking about COVID. Really, that was the big division event: is should restrictions be lifted? And I think if I'm remembering stuff correctly, by the beginning of last year, that's when most places had lifted everything and certain things started to relax a little bit. Okay, maybe there was still talk on vax passports and stuff like that, but it was a big divisive event. People arguing with each other. We're arguing with friends, arguing with family. And now the same thing's happening here, but it just so happens to be over the alleged criminal case of a fairly big influencer in a way, because what else do you call him, I guess? But I don't. The thing that worries me, if it's a human trafficking case and they've got 6 women that have come forward out of however many hundreds of women have vouched for him the other way, I don't see how the maths works out in terms of the money he could have made off them compared to what they've seized. Because they've seized multi-millions, if not into the hundred, maybe, I don't know. I don't know the full value of these things. But they've seized a lot of stuff. And this 30-day trial thing just sounds very, very excessive and sudden, like they're trying to put a message out there to either America or whoever, saying, look how good we are, yeah, we've got him, we'll hold him for you, or whatever. Or just show that they're not a corrupt when they clearly are a corrupt country, or maybe something else is going on behind the scenes. Who knows? But I can't 100% say he is innocent, because how can I? But I think it's way too excessive at the moment. It really, really seems like a bit of a hit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. As I said, I don't know. Neither of us know the man personally, and while I think he's very misunderstood, I think he's a man who deliberately is decisive. Like one of the quotes I always heard from him, rather than if he's talking about, transgender people in sport, he won't go, women aren't as physically strong as men. He'll go, women are weak, right? Like he plays for an emotion. So part of this controversy is his own fault, but for anyone who's, and I know a lot of people listening to this will have made their opinion up on the man based off clips. But I urge you to go and listen to anything he's done long form. I am not saying you'll come out at the end of an hour conversation with the man and go, I really like Andrew Tate. You have all right to dislike him. And I don't agree with everything he says, far from it. But at the same time, when you look at some of the underpinning principles that he lives his life by, I think that are there misogynistic traits potentially in him? Yes. Would I expect him to give violence to women? No. And also, there is the case before about the woman that said she was kidnapped, when actually she was just seen by a boyfriend and she came up with an excuse going, oh, they kept me against my will. And, that was been completely debunked, right? So do you think, for the people that are going to put their tinfoil hats on about this, do you think the clip of him saying, first you're cancelled, then you're arrested, then you get hit, do you think that in any way was foreshadowing? Or is it a coincidence? I'm going to play devil's advocate, but I want your thoughts first.
100%, I think foreshadowing, because I believe that there are these economic hitmen out there. There are these government-sponsored agencies that will do the hit jobs that they need to. And I think there's enough stuff out there to prove this is the case in certain arenas. Whether that would count with someone like Tate, I don't know. Because it's not like it's not like he affects what happens with government, really. Whereas a foreign national certainly can. So I don't see him in the same light, but I can see why they'd want him cancelled, but not necessarily why they'd want him killed.
Yes. Yeah. He's not a detrimental effect like a Putin or a North Korea is, but in the short term. But long term, if you change the viewpoints with the influence he has as of many, especially young people growing up, could that be a concern for the future? I don't know. To play devil's advocate here, I also think if you've got women locked up in your basement ready to be sold to Prince Andrew, you're gonna go on a podcast and go, you know, next thing they're going to do, they're going to arrest me, and it's not. I've got nothing. I'm no skeletons in the closet. Just young girls. No skeletons in the closet. It's happening. So when it happens, people automatically don't change their opinion on the man. You know, if you are a criminal, that is what you would say. I don't know. I don't. I think going on to your COVID thing, like I went sometimes a bit too tinfoil hat during the pandemic. And I think with reason. I think most people are now much more skeptical of mainstream media. I think the I won't say the death of CNN, but the downward turn of CNN in response to what they've been playing at shows that a lot of people aren't, you know, believing mainstream media. But I do think the last 6 months, and this is going to be a segue onto the next thing. It's kind of changed my mind back towards the tinfoil hat. But the last 6 months has made me feel a little bit better. Seeing China open their borders, seeing the proof of vaccination and in travel restrictions in Hong Kong be lifted, seeing all these things that I thought, because I was 100% certain that the Leave Home Safe app, that in Hong Kong we have to scan something to get in any building. I thought that was going to be the first step towards the social credit system. And the fact that they've dropped that now makes it like, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, the things I was worried about escalating, maybe for now, and we're not going to go climate lockdowns in this episode, but comes back and we go, okay, you could have done this, and you haven't done this. So, I mean, I'm not going to say that I think we're probably more likely that if this is an orchestrated thing, it's probably more orchestrated from the Romanian government to kind of go, well, he's up to something. Let's make us look. You know, rather than there's a man in a top of a ivory tower in a bank somewhere, you know, that controls governments going, let's get Andrew Tate. Like, I don't think you probably don't even give a fuck about that, you know?
No, I think that's exactly it. I think it's definitely more Romanian-centred than anything else. But
so that's segue I was going on to. And this one is a little bit more frightening, I think, in my opinion. Because, like, you know, like I do think the man's misunderstood, but I don't care that much about Andrew Tate. But if you're listening, Andrew, if you want to come on the show, feel free. But what do you think about Jordan? We're both big fans of Jordan Peterson. What do you think of them taking back his clinical license? Maybe.
This severely worries. This sets a very, very dark tone.
Does it surprise you that Canada is in the forefront of all these things? Because it's always Canada. It's Canada had the vaccine issues with people getting the bank accounts shut off as well, right? Like, why do you think Canada has been the forefront of restrictions?
Let's not forget that Canada's the reason we all know of Jordan Peterson. If they hadn't been trying to put these bills in, class in anti, what was it? Yeah, it was like class in and anything. Well, not even anti-trans because it wasn't really a slogan, but put in gender pronouns and things like that into official bill. So obviously, not using it would be classed as hate speech, that sort of stuff. I'm butchering that. I'm paraphrasing that, but that's how we know of Jordan Peterson. Otherwise, it just would have been a university lecture. His book might have sold in certain places, but we wouldn't know about him. The rest of his stuff wouldn't have come out. So it's because of Canada putting these woke principles into law that we know about him to begin with. Why Canada? I don't know. Maybe it's the lack of sun. Maybe it's all the big testosterone fueled farm boys end up going to America instead. I don't know. It's a weird country. Can't say too much about it. It's a weird country with a weak leader, a very weak leader, possibly one of the weakest on the national stage. So that doesn't help, obviously.
Say goodbye to your Canadian visa, mate.
That's very, very worrying. The fact they want him to submit to social media re-education. That could be the most Big Brother-esque thing. And I mean 1984 style Big Brother, not the UK reality show with Jade Goody. That could be the most 1984 thing I've ever heard said. Ever. That's terrifying. Re-education or we take your license. He's helping more people out there than most psychologists I could think of, clinically trained at least.
What do you think the gain is from this, though? What do you think the gain is in this, though? Because, like, Jordan Peterson is a person now that I don't think he practices it anymore on a one-to-one basis, right? So
no,
if he gets his license taken off him, none of his followers are going to stop listening to him. He is bigger than this. No, like, no one's going to. He become more of a celebrity.
Yeah.
So do you reckon the message behind this is not to get Jordan Peterson, but to get to somebody who needs their license to stop them from speaking out online? Like, I don't see the win in this for Canada.
I think it goes deeper than that. I think it's more about the egotism of the people who decide what's right or wrong to say, the people who want him to submit to this re-education. Because, okay, so what is it re-education to? Their doctrine, their curriculum. Who decides whether that's the right thing or not? Because, okay, some questionable things he said, but I've never really heard him say anything wrong where I'd be like, whoa, he definitely should not say that. He said some aggressive and emotional and passionate things that are deemed very, very controversial. But what are we re-educating him to?
He's also a thoughtful speaker. He's not, to compare him to the last guy, he's not, and I'm not at any point saying Andrew Tate doesn't think before he speaks, but I think Andrew Tate, if he does, he deliberately winds up. He deliberately, he instead of saying, like with the example with trans people in sport earlier, he will say things like, rather than if somebody is going out dressed a certain way through a dodgy neighborhood, like they can't be surprised if something bad happens to them. And what he actually says was, women are to blame for rape, which is horrendous choice of words. But Jordan Peterson chooses his words very carefully. Jordan Peterson isn't necessarily divisive in what he says. Do you think there's an element now that Jordan Peterson has his podcast on YouTube and the topics now have been a little bit more up against the wire? Like the topics recently were, like, it started off with that woman who was liberals, now conservative. We are now, then it went to the climate change hoax, and then it was the Wuhan lab leaks. And these are the podcasts that he's been doing recently. And do you think it's because those topics that he's been talking about have now been much, much, much more taboo?
This is what it's more about. Because if you think it can't be about his religious stances, it can't be about his stances on masculinity or helping young men or anything like that, because that's what he's been talking about since his early videos, right? So it's not that. It's his recent comments criticising government. So again, that's the worrying thing for me. It's now he started criticising government, he has to submit to re-education or lose his licence. There's nothing good that can come from that, whichever side of the political spectrum you're on. There's nothing good that comes from that. So that's the terrifying. It's all political point scoring. Whoever these people, whatever this board is that wants to take his licence and submit into this re-education, whatever that is, it won't matter. If he loses his licence, does it really change anything for Jordan Peterson? Well, he's not practicing anymore, one-to-one. He's got his world stage, he's got his podcast, he's got his social media accounts so far. He's got a global audience that adore him no matter what happens to him. So it doesn't change anything, and it potentially helps him get even bigger. But it does give them their chance to go, well, look at us, we win, we've got our point because we took your licence. So what is the benefit to doubling down on this? I don't get it. It's I don't know. Again, putting the tinfoil hat on for a second, it could be a case of all these agendas that were pushed over the last couple of years that have not materialised. Maybe this is the pushback from other directions. Well, we can't force you to do something, so we'll just silence the people that might be educating you a different way. And then in 2 years, we'll be able to force these things on you because you won't be hearing their opinion anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's the thing, like I'm less, we'll have my moments, but I'm less scared of big worldwide scary global policies. But I am definitely more worried going to 2022 on how people deal with debates and discussions. Because before, I always had the sanctity of podcasts, because I thought the fact that podcasts are thriving means there are a number of people that still respect long-form debate, still respect discussion. And now even those have been soundbited and weaponized. And that really worries me. And I watched recently there, I don't know if you subscribe to the channel Vice. And
I used to. I'm an old school Vicer, and then it went a bit weird for me.
Yeah, so he did this feminism panel. I don't want to go into this topic, but I just want to highlight something. So we had Pearl from Just Pearly Things in the Inner Game. We had Sydney Watson. And then we had a bunch of people on the other side, feminism, a couple of transgender people. One was very, I didn't necessarily agree with opinions, but super nice, super respectful. But she was the only one, this one transgender. Everyone else, the whole panel was talking about feminism. And one person was talking about how she was disabled. Another person was talking about how she was black. Another person was talking about her transgender issues. This is a feminism topic. And they kept going off and getting sidetracked. And then when Pearl started talking about the transgender issues in sport and how it affects her as a semi-pro volleyball player, everyone called her pretty privilege. Everyone go, well, you're tall. That's a performance enhancer. And they just laughed at her and just trotted down. I'm like, I'm not at any point for anyone saying that the other side of my argument is wrong or right. I see this on both sides. This isn't a side thing. It's now we have this inability now of being able to understand, empathize, and discuss the other point of view. There is too much aggression in conversation. Debates are now aggressive.
Yeah.
Where they should be. I started a podcast because I wanted to speak to people who have same that you and me have a very similar viewpoints, but I like the times where we've disagreed. I have guests on that I've disagreed with, and I think I help understand people. I don't think that happens anymore. People don't want to understand; they want to be right.
I think most public debates now, more time is spent saying, well, you interrupted, so you can let me finish. I'm my turn to talk. I think it's more that than anyone actually getting their point across. And people are so quick to anger in debates now. I rarely watch TV because there's nothing on there that interests me. I'm not trying to say I'm better than anyone else. There's just nothing there that interests me. So I don't watch it. But there used to be a case where when I would be sat there just monging out, flicking through channels, and I forget the name of it because it's been so long since I've seen this stuff, but where they'd have a panel of politicians and people and the audience asking question time, whatever.
Question time. That's the one.
And everyone on there, like the audience members would be so like trying to like justify their anger in their question directly at that person who's been booked on the panel that night that may not have been booked the night before. I'm like, everyone's entitled to their opinion, but there's so much anger behind I'm right and you're wrong. I'm going to say this in such a tone that when there's any pushback whatsoever, it instantly becomes an argument. They won't listen to the other side because they've already decided I'm right and I'm angry that you're here representing the opposite side.
You said earlier on that you don't on television. It's not because you're better than anybody else. And the thing I always would say, at what point do people on these complicated things like politics and finance and health and fitness, because there's tribes in this, and all these different matters, where people are so confident in their opinion with no formal training or education that they're so determined to be right and you are wrong that it becomes an argument. The problem with I think there's a problem with the debate when someone goes into the debate wanting to be right. When I go into a debate, I want to find out where I'm wrong. I want to find out where the gaps in my knowledge are. If I got onto a podcast with a big guest, right, and it's slightly different with you and because we're mates, but when I have a big guest on the podcast, if I just agree with absolutely everything they said, I'm not necessarily learning anything. There is no real benefit to that to me. If I learn something that maybe I didn't disagree with, or someone changed their mind, or explained something to me that hit a light bulb, these are the golden moments in communication. And this is what I would, if there's something I want for humanity in 2023, it's the ability for people to have an open discussion and to not hate on people for having a slightly different view. Because we're all good people. You can be a massively over the top feminist, and I still love you for absolutely everything. Point in point, I am getting married this year. It's a big thing for this year, and Ellie is way more, as you'd expect, but way more feminist than me. And I don't agree with some of the things. I agree with a lot of things she says. I don't agree with all of them, and that's fine. There is nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people think there is.
Yeah, some people do. Some people think that to make a working relationship, you have to be completely aligned on every single point, especially political agendas. When I believe, and I could be misquoting, I believe the exact opposite is true. I think that's why the phrase "opposites attract" came around. But I could be right. I could be misremembering something I heard. But I believe it's when you're on the opposite side, it actually works better. But it's. I admire your optimism for the hope that 2023 would bring around the opportunity for people to be a bit more understanding about each other. I think it's going to get worse. I think it's going to get absolutely fucking worse. It's going to go complete opposite way. My personal opinion.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to keep on rambling. It's not relevant.
So, going back onto sort of like the year in review, before we talk about ourselves, because we're going to finish talking about our 2022s and what our goals are for 2023. What do you think were the defining moments of 2022 from a global standpoint? It doesn't have to be political. It could be interesting things. It could be things that you stuck out in your head, but stuff that's not personal for now. Stuff that you think, what do you think this last year will be remembered for?
I'd say the closest we have come to nuclear war since like the 80s. Honestly, people used to say from 2016 onwards that Trump was going to bring in World War III and nuclear war, and I think it was further away from ever happening from a Russian and a North Korean standpoint. It was further away from ever happening, but I think last year we came close, very close, with the whole Russia-Ukraine thing, and some governments having to tread on eggshells a little bit, but pushing the wrong buttons and trying to show face and show themselves as the strong thing here, when realistically, during that, who really has all the cards in the deck is pretty much Putin, really. What could they do with Zelensky? Get him on the cover of Vogue, which is fucking weird. It's weird. There's a lot about that I question, but we're not gonna do that today.
This is where I do disagree with you, and I have a bit more optimism. I don't think many people on the planet are fans of nuclear weapons. I certainly don't agree with them being put into the ocean and then I'm told to have my bag for life. Not a climate change denier. Just if you're asking us to do stuff,
it's true.
Do the big stuff. But the one benefit, I think, of nuclear weapons, they won't be used.
No,
I think they're the world's biggest deterrent, and I do not think. I think something would have to go dramatically wrong to escalate, and I don't think a war of Russia and Ukraine is doing that.
It's
not a chance.
It's literally my dad is bigger than your dad, you know?
Yeah.
And the one comfort that can come from it all is if as soon as one company fires one, we're all gone anyway. So that's the end of it anyway, you know? And from what I gather, it would be pretty instant. So this is the thing that gets me, right? Again, without the tinfoil hat on. But of course I've got the tinfoil hat on because it's wired into me. But as soon as they were talking about Russia and Ukraine, whichever newspaper it was did a map of the UK showing the exact radiuses of every nuclear weapon that would be fired at a major city and where in the UK you would be safe. If that is not fear-mongering of the highest order, because nukes were never aimed at us as far as I'm aware. I don't believe Putin ever said anything about pushing them our direction. The fear that must have put into people, that article, is ridiculous. But
where was it?
Where was it?
Where were we safe?
What, in terms... literally on the outskirts of several coastlines. That was about it. Scotland seemed fine. Scotland, yeah, absolutely fucking fine. Essex, obliterated. London, obliterated. Norfolk, obliterated.
So all the best people remain.
See you later, Kent. Little bit of Surrey, which is the nice bit. You get some hills, but obviously there'll be no air that you can actually breathe. But basically,
leave Scotland, get rid of Essex. This sounds like an improvement.
Even with this, that's a Scottish independence to start nuclear war. But even if you're outside of this radius, you're still fucked. Still fucked because it'll be full on nuclear winter. You're still fucked. So there's nowhere you could get to. But Russia invades Ukraine, and instantly division is caused between people because there's something. No, I don't believe anyone was really pro-Russia, but the argument became more about Ukraine. Are you pro-Ukraine? Ukrainian flags went straight up on Facebook. Cover pictures all over the place, right? The Queen dies. Instant division. Some people argue, do we need the monarchy? Do we not need the monarchy? We can't take an event just as an event anymore because we're so wired to now put our opinion behind it, which I'm going to put out there 90% of the time is not actually our opinion. It's been formed from what we're hearing from other people first. I don't think there's many people out there, and I'm putting myself in this too, that can form an original opinion. And some people will argue with that. But that's just the way it is. And that's how our brains are wired as well.
And algorithms, right? I have, whether we think our opinions are original or not, our opinions have been formed by the information that's put in front of us. So I always thought the way it began, we all have a process, and that information comes into our head, and we construct that. So now, if I watch a flat Earth thing on YouTube, I'm going to see a lot of flat Earth things, and I'm going to convince myself that flat Earth is real, regardless of whether it's not. If you borrowed the laptop of a flat Earther for a month, you would start to believe that the world was flat, and you could have been the biggest denier prior to having his laptop.
Of course,
right?
So
I think this is the part why I don't like the division, because it's like I at no point do I think I have a completely well-rounded opinion of what I think about the world. There are gaps in my knowledge because my knowledge is very pushed towards my personal biases because of how social media works. But I think, going back onto 2022, I definitely think the Queen dying was the biggest moment of 2022. Because we did a whole show on this, right? And I think it's, go back and listen to it if you want to remember that very sad time. But it's something I never thought would happen. And you have this weird, I had this weird moment of almost realizing, I said to you on that show, didn't I? That almost weird moment of realizing your own mortality. Just from this thing, you think there's almost be a constant. You think the Queen's always going to be there. You don't think about a time when she's not there. And it hit me hard. And I'm not an anti-monarchy, but I think they're a wonderful figurehead. I think it's a wonderful thing to have on a postcard and a tourist attraction. But I cannot stand that people have got aggressive about the monarchy. Like, someone's died. Like, if someone did this to your mum, don't need parents anyway. You would have all right to kick them in the dick. And I just don't. I think it's so. We got to this point now where someone dies and you are still pushing your agenda. It's disgusting.
Yeah. There is a time and a place. Decorum does not exist anymore. Like, how much bashing of people happens at funerals? If that happened, there'd be fist fights every fucking day across the country. There's a time and a place. And okay, granted, there is a very, very controversial figure in the royal family, but it's not like the royal family have all stepped up publicly to his defence and claimed his innocence or anything like that. And yes, okay, whilst there might be some protection, well, that's a fucking son. Like, what would you do? Everyone loves to go, yeah.
Yeah, his mum died and people are like sitting having a go at him. He's not been found guilty of anything. He's at his mum's funeral. If there's a day to leave him alone, it's this.
Yeah. So there's people, I know people that guy shouted at the procession, shouted at Andrew, you're a nonce or whatever the hell it is, or you're a pedo, whatever the hell he shouted, and he got arrested. And I know people that were sharing the article of him being arrested saying, look, this is oppression. You can't criticise. And yes, but that was a funeral procession for his fucking mum. Come on. I think he's clearly guilty, but nothing's been proved.
I personally think he's a bad husband, but I don't think he's guilty. I think he's a terrible person. I think Prince Andrew, he slept with a 16-year-old person. Most of the hate, by the way, is in America, where that would be illegal. But in the UK, there's a legal age. We have no idea whether he knew, right? Like we have no idea. He slept with a 16-year-old girl when he was married. Yeah. He's a bad husband. He's not necessarily involved in a sex trafficking crime. So I refuse to cast judgment when I don't know all the facts. But we've just said how much we don't like censorship. But I do think that person that shouted nonce to Prince Andrew deserved everything that was coming to him. Like, if he said that online, if he went on Twitter and went, he's a nonce on that day, you can't censor that guy. But you went out to the procession. It is like jumping the barricade and doing streaking, right? You get tackled, right? You insult somebody at their mum's funeral, you get arrested.
Because there's so many people that want to be the hero. Still so many people that want to be the hero, and it does my nut. That wasn't a heroic act. That was a foolhardy act. For what purpose? You got some attention. You got on news. The girl next door who you're trying to impress still ain't going to bang you. She's still not going to. So, what did you get? Beaten up in the police van, and well done, cool, so courageous.
The next thing that happened in 2022 that springs to mind, which maybe is something that is a bigger news story for me than anybody else, but it was another thing like the Queen dying that I thought would never, ever, ever happen. Vince McMahon is no longer the chairman of WWE.
But it's eras.
But I think people sit there and go, oh, Simon's chatting about wrestling again. Just look at the history. Like, if anyone message me, I'll give you a history of pro wrestling. One is I think it's interesting, but this is a guy that everyone thought would die on the job. This is a guy that took wrestling from territories in America to global stage. A person that's run that business and been in every single show on running on 3 hours of sleep, getting to the gym at 2 a.m. for 40 years. And he went out in the most Vince McMahon way possible. Someone that is guilty of sexual misconduct and using company money for it. Like, he is a scumbag. And Triple H taking over, which obviously, if people are fans of the show, know how much of a big fan I am of Triple H. But that was a huge moment. And I also, like, I'll get your take on that in a second. But I'm sitting there thinking about things that happened last year and having a review. And you mentioned COVID was still a story. And I feel there's a post-COVID and a pre-COVID 2022. Because I don't remember much that happened from the first half of this year. I remember a lot from August onwards.
Yeah, I've got a little list up. I say a little list. I'm scrolling through Wikipedia's horrifically aligned key events of 2022. But they all seem to be political. It's really weird. They're all political. We saw Djokovic deported from Australia. That's not political. That's cool.
What do you think of Djokovic deported from Australia for being an anti-vaxxer?
I wholeheartedly disagree. I don't think anyone's medical status should dictate what they are or are allowed to do, with the argument of, okay, well, if they've got something that's highly contagious, which he didn't have, and you could push the argument of, well, COVID was contagious and they showed that, well, we now know that's not the case. We now know it's the complete opposite. It had little to no effect on transmission rate. It's just another hit job, another media hit job based on a certain politically aligned agenda to not have any
ground, though.
naysayers.
Admirably.
You know?
He admirably studied his ground. He really did.
I think he handled that very, very well. I think he handled that incredibly well.
Totally
I didn't realise how early in the year Russia had invaded Ukraine. I thought that was way, way, way later, but apparently not.
Will Smith slaps Chris Rock.
Will Smith slapgate. There was slapgate. But this article is boring me because it's all political stuff. It's doing my nut. Like April, key event, the number of confirmed cases exceeds 500 million worldwide. Yeah, but in April 2022, no one cared anymore. Why is that a key event? It's not. Large Hadron Collider went back up, so that's why we're in the parallel time zone now, because Large Hadron Collider went back on. That's why it's all gone a bit weird.
The World Cup?
Monkeypox, World Cup, of course. A very
Messi winning his World Cup. Lots of upsets in the World Cup as well, I thought. And some horrendous times in Hong Kong. There's nothing worse than things going to a penalty shootout when you're up at 3:00 in the morning to start the game. As a person that's not a football fan,
sure, yeah,
I'm going to piss off more people today. This is going to be the most divisive thing I say. But do you know what this World Cup showed me?
Go on.
Why I don't like football. And there were some great games, and I'm not going to lie, but I think football has deteriorated so much because people now play for fouls rather than play for space. There's times where there was a goal-scoring opportunity, but you wanted the penalty first. And it takes all the fun out of the game. It takes all the fun out of the game. Like, diving is a trained skill now rather than something people just trying to pull a fast one.
Yeah.
It's the norm rather than the exception. And I think there has to be stricter rules on it.
There's so much about football that I can't enjoy it anymore. I really can't. And I used to be a fairly big fan. I can't enjoy it anymore because the sport itself has changed. But people, year on year, are getting more and more dogmatic about it. Like, I will never get what happens in someone's head, in a grown man's head, that causes him to cry or get angry and lash out in violence when his team has lost. That is a mentality I will never understand. And how many people are doing that week on week, letting the outcome of their favourite team's goal, their favourite team's result affect their emotions, and therefore their choices based on those emotions. I don't get it. I really don't get it.
I had a friend of mine who said to me that he couldn't understand why I didn't cry in the 2007 World Cup when England lost South Africa in the final. And he went, rugby fans aren't as passionate as football fans. No, we're just not aggressive. But
true.
Did you ever watch the Derren Brown numbers of years ago? We did this fantastic show about mob mentality. Probably. And he got people in an audience wearing masks, and they had to control the life through like a vote of what happens to this guy's life on the show. And it started with like, woman walks past, does he A, she offers to buy him a drink, B, she accuses him of touching her ass. And it escalates to the point where they were like breaking his TV, they got him kidnapped because they were faceless. And I think a lot of this is like, what would you do when what would you do when you feel there were no consequences? Would that same person get angry if he's watching it with his wife at home? Probably not. It's because he's in the stadium with a 4,000 Millwall fans.
But then again, it's and again, I'm not saying this is true of all football fans, but a lot of what happens round about the World Cup time, there's normally an increase in domestic violence adverts on TV and on tube and in media as well, because it increases.
That's so disgusting.
You know, but again, it's not true of every single person. It's not true. But they recognise the fact that many people are going to be emotionally affected by this.
Hashtag not all fans. Hashtag not all fans.
Not all fans. So it's man, it's so fucking weird. And again, more divisions then created, because you then got the people that double down on this and blame all men, which we have heard as a hashtag before. It's fucking weird.
Let's not touch that one again.
Weird. Let's not go there.
What else? Anything else on this list that isn't COVID cases, monkeypox, or politics?
I went on to a very.
Is that not interesting? It's not been that interesting year, though, has it? Really, other than the big moments.
Not really.
Like,
if that's all they can drum up. I went on to a different thing, which is.
I'll give you another wrestling one. CM Punk got into a controversy. CM Punk got into a controversy and got into a fight with the executive vice presidents of his company less than a year exactly a year from coming back after 7 years. Still not to return. Good Lord. Mental. big. If people are like, if you want an interesting year behind the scenes, pro wrestling had a huge one. So like, if we've realised that other than that 2022, have you got one?
This one looks like it might be better, because it has got number 10, the top 10 events of 2022 that shaped, shook, or brightened. So this can't be political.
So there's brightened. Brighton sounds promising.
It says brightened, but number 10 is Queen Elizabeth dying. Is that brightened?
Not the brightest
anyone's year? Yeah, it might brighten some people's years.
Charles?
I don't know.
Sorry, that sounds really bad. No, it does not brighten this year.
Something about Brazil, something about some landmark compensation fund. Elon Musk taking over Twitter.
Still to this day, do you think good thing? Especially if the Twitter files is true, and we don't go into that here, but
it's all political.
That could be a game-changing thing in a number of years if Elon Musk taking over.
I think it's good, because I like Elon Musk, but I can't say I 100% trust him. I can't. He's essentially doing what the other richest people in the world have done as well, which is buy a media company. And you could, put the tinfoil hat on and say it's to control certain narratives. What he said about him, what he said about things that he aligns with, I don't know. We can't say for certain.
It'll probably start with the honourable thing of let's pull this back and let's expose and have free speech. And then his platform could just be the other side of this coin, right?
Yeah. But the things that everyone's scared about, everyone said, well, this is going to happen. Trump's now going to come back on it, which he hasn't done, even though his account's active again. It's going to be the rise of Nazis and the right again, which hasn't happened. If anything, it's the left doubling down on their arguments on there. It's not changed much. The interface hasn't changed much. I don't know what the long-term goal is, what the long-term plan is. We just have to wait and see. To be fair, for me, it's got a little bit better and a little bit worse, because definitely the algorithm has improved in terms of showing you what you interact with most. And for me, I interact with a lot of business stuff on there. So now all I'm seeing is guys offering their lead magnets and stuff like that. And I'm like, just scrolling, going, God, another one, fucking hell. It's weird. On Instagram, it was always I'm looking for 5 people, and it was just constant. On Twitter, it's this amazing thing that I'm amazed, and I'm surprised Instagram hasn't done, which is auto DMs. So you can do a tweet saying, I've just created this amazing guide, the top 20 protein recipes that I tried in 2022. If you want a copy of it, retweet and comment the word protein, and it will go straight to your DM. And it's all automated. It will go straight to your DMs.
Oh, that's good.
And you have 2 options. You can do the DM where they just get the lead magnet, or the DM where you get their email address, which is the better thing to do. And it's all automated. But the problem with Twitter is because they're so easily automated and it works for a lot of people, everyone's doing it. So I could go on Twitter for an hour and see nothing but those, just because it's stuff I've interacted with before, So maybe I have to start arguing with people or looking at porn to change my algorithm. I don't know, one or two.
So what else is on this list? Anything generally bright?
That list was boring. I'm trying to find media events, like you said, like Slapgate. Nothing. If I type in anything to do with media, it just goes to
in movies. In movies, we had Top Gun Maverick.
Top Gun.
We had Top Gun Maverick. We had Avatar coming back, which I have yet to see.
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet. We had the new Batman, which again divisive. But
I liked it.
I liked it quite a lot. But Top Gun for me was the best film of last year. And just before we went,
I think the Riddler will do. He's not as good, but he's done for the Riddler what Heath Ledger did for the Joker. He's reimagined the character. I think it's fantastic.
100%.
We still don't have a new James Bond.
And but we no longer have the correct Superman. I'm just going to put it out there. We no longer have the right Superman.
Yes. However, that opens the door.
It does make
I dropped him a message.
Very, very interesting.
I dropped him a message on Instagram. I slid into his DMs and I went, sorry to hear the news, but now this opens the door for you to play the spy you were born to play. I have a new second favourite.
Oh, go on then.
Did you hear there was a gun barrel scene apparently filmed with a certain actor?
Oh, no.
Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Right.
From Kick-Ass.
Okay. Yeah. You might have told me this.
And I originally went, what? Who? And then I went and watched Bullet Train.
Okay.
And yes, please.
Really?
He's jumped Richard Madden. He's cracking. He needs to put a bit of size on, but that's easily done with the amount of steroids in Hollywood. Yeah. And he's. I think he could be outstanding. And I mean, I still want Cavill, but yes, we haven't had that yet. Hopefully, that's my prediction for 2023. You're going to have to announce it this year, right? You have to be announced it.
And the only thing that makes me think it won't be Cavill now is because whatever this game-related TV or film that he's, whether it's World of Warcraft or whatever the hell it is, I forget.
Yeah, it's World of Warcraft.
It's World of Warcraft. He's involved with that in some way. That to me seems like it's going to be a massive, massive project with a lot of pressure on it because obviously the World of Warcraft fans are huge and it's a huge base. I'll be surprised if he would have the time to take on something as big as Bond, which is going to be multiple films, assuming they go well. So I don't know. I think the fact that he announced that, it makes me think he's maybe not even considering it.
I have my choice. If they did decide to go with a Bond of colour, I know who I want.
Go on.
Have you seen the TV show Emily in Paris?
No, not even heard of it.
You not? It's light-hearted. It's a light-hearted fun. So it stars Lily Collins. You know who her father is, don't you?
Okay, gotcha.
Phil Collins' daughter.
Gotcha.
Despite sounding American, she's from Chicago. She moves to a marketing firm it's chick flicky. She moves to a marketing firm in Paris, and it's just the stories of that. And it's one of those things where it's like they almost build up to something dramatic happening. Nothing quite like dramatic enough to keep the story going, but nothing crazy. Like it's not like no one's dying or explosions or anything like this. It's just light-hearted, fun, embarrassing. It's just like an easy watch, and I quite like it. But she gets with this guy called Alfie, and if you Google him after the show, I have never seen a man wear a suit as well as him, ever.
Ooh.
I have a total man crush. You're googling him now, aren't you?
Of course.
Live on air.
As soon as you said suit, I'm like, right, I'm going to check this shit out.
And he's in good shape. British guy. Yeah, British, and he's something like Lewis Lavencroft or something like this. But he's definitely more suited to the role, I think, than René Jean Page.
Okay, I could accept that. Again, like we've discussed this, I don't have an issue. We don't have an issue with an ethnic James Bond.
I don't now.
But if it's forced for the sake of ticking a box, then that's kind of fucking racist.
Now they killed him off. The doors are open, right? You reimagine the character. It's a brand new character. You can't get away with this now. Fine, do what you want. Like beforehand, when there was a through line of the same person, it would feel more forced because it was like, well, we're just doing this because we want to tick the quota. Whereas now, it's like, well, the quota's started again.
Yeah.
So like the whole thing doesn't bother me anymore. Not the slightest.
No, and it shouldn't.
So now we've realised that 2022 was quite a boring year for news, other than the biggest stories. Tell me a little bit about your 2022. What are your highlights? What are your challenging moments? What has 2022 been like for you?
So the biggest thing for me was possibly the toughest physical challenge I've ever been through, which was the fan dance, which was a climb up Penny Fan in Wales with a I forget the distance now. It wasn't 24 kilometers. Yeah, it might have even been 24 kilometers. No, it can't have been 24 kilometers. I will double check this. Whatever the distance was, it's not just the mountain climb. It's you're then doing this this long yomp. Yeah, 24 kilometers. So basically, it's part of the SAS selection test. So you have a 35-pound rucksack, which the SAS have 50.
And you did it with the rucksack?
I did it inadvertently with the rucksack because I hadn't trained, and because my back was in a bad way, having slipped 2 discs only a couple of months earlier. I was unsure about what weight I could handle, but I didn't want to do the weightless rucksack. So you could take a rucksack with just your water and your change of clothes, and that was it. I didn't want to do that. So I did the next weight down, which I believe was 20 pounds. But once I had 20 pounds worth of weight in there and everything else, and my water and my change of clothes and whatever the else I took with me, I ended up doing it with 37 pounds anyway. So I did that main thing. So yeah, it's this climb up penny fan, which was brutal. Then you climb down and then you do the rest of the walk, which is fairly flat, but it's a 24-kilometer distance. You get to the halfway point, you've got to turn around, do that distance again, and finish by climbing back up over the top of the mountain and down again. That was the toughest physical thing I've done, the closest I've come to quitting in the most confusing environment ever, because I found myself on the second ascent up the mountain on my own. I had people way behind me and I had people way ahead of me. And I was in this weird position where my brain's just going, I want to quit. I can't do this anymore. I literally can't take another step. I'm in so much pain. My hips are hurting. I can't stand up straight. I can't straighten my knees. What the fuck do I do? And what do you do in that position? I'm like, what do I do? The rangers aren't going to come and carry me out. No helicopter's going to come in and carry me out. So I don't know if this was just the thought process you end up going with, is you realise, fuck, I've hit rock bottom. But you also realise, well, no one's going to save you. No one can do this for you. You've still got to put one foot in front of the other and fucking get up there and get down again. My God, it was brutal. I was so emotional at the end of it. But this year, the plan is to potentially do it again, because I want to do it with a much more positive mindset. And now I know what to expect. More than likely, sometime in the summer. I have a couple of friends and a couple of clients that are talking about it. It's not going to be a Paul Moore organised event again. He's doing something different this time. So I'm contemplating. I'll train for it this time as well.
After June,
It'll be after June.
Shall I join you?
Do it, lad. Do it.
I'm hating the fact that I've said this. You know, I mean, like I haven't done anything like that in such a long time. Like walking the length of Wales was my thing, and that was like 10, 12 years ago. And that I completely understand that feeling. Just because I had a mate bail out of me halfway through, so I was walking 2 days on my own, and it's just like if you pack it in, no one will know. But also, I'm in the middle of Wales, in the middle of a field. Where the fuck am I going to go?
What am I going to do? What else am I going to do?
It's just as hard to get back down. So just get on with it.
There was a part of me that was like, the group behind me had some of the Rangers in it, had some of the SS guys in it. And I was just thinking to myself, maybe I'll just wait for them and they'll help or tell me what to do. But this other voice was louder going, that's kind of embarrassing, Rob. You're going to wait for those guys to tell you what to do when what they're going to tell you to do. They're going to tell you to walk. It was this weird internal battle between my ego and actual inner voice, which I don't think I hear from enough. I don't think anyone hears from enough, because the ego's so loud. So that ego was the one going, I can't do this anymore. This is too tough. I can't move. But yeah, I still moved without anyone ever physically handling me or really talking to me. And I think that it's taken me a while to learn from that experience. So that's why I want to go do it again. Like, what can I learn from the experience once I have properly trained for it? And once I go into it kind of knowing what it's going to involve, it's still going to be tough as fuck. I'm still going to struggle through it. I know I will, because I haven't got years of a cardiovascular base like some of the guys had. I haven't got that. So, and it just to then kind of go, well, the mountain defeated me last time, and when I went back, I defeated it. Perfect rematch.
Yeah.
I will body slam someone at the top.
It might be me. I mean, this is a bold claim. I don't know if this is even possible, or even worth doing, right, when we're absolutely destroyed. My Blue Yeti is portable. I also have 2 road mics. 2 road mics, right? We could do an episode at the top.
Shit.
2 road mics, right? An episode at the top. Could you imagine that?
Whew. Good Lord.
I'm brainstorming ideas. So that's how your year started.
It's windy, like.
Oh, imagine. Yeah, maybe the road mics then. Like, so that started your year. Obviously, there was one thing I want to discuss from your year, but where did your year go from that? What were the highlights of your year? Because I want to talk about your talk at some point.
Yeah, so not long after that, the next quarter became my talk. Between that, I had 24 hours notice that the gym I was working at was closing, less than 24 hours notice that the gym I was working at was closing, and had to panic, move to another gym and try and retain all my clients whilst trying to set up 2 online businesses at the same time. So if anything, this year has taught me resilience, but being pushed out of my comfort zone as well. Climbing a mountain is not part of my comfort zone. Extreme endurance events is nowhere near my comfort zone. Talking in front of people on a stage, I can't. Okay, I love being center of attention. I love talking, but I can't say that's my comfort zone because it's not something I've done before. Okay, I've taught in classrooms. That's a very, very different environment. Very different environment.
How do you view your talk looking back on it now, a couple of quarters on?
I'm still in the mindset of, oh man, I could have done this better. I should have done this so differently. But the feedback I got the next day from people that did not have to reach out and give me any feedback at all was game changing. And that instantly gave me the urge to do another one, which I then reached out to the gym I'm now working out of and did one on email marketing, obviously on a much, much smaller scale. And one of my top outcomes for this first quarter of the year is to do another public speaking gig. But I haven't really figured out who I'm going to contact yet. But I've got the quarter to get that done in. It definitely gave me the urge to do more. I enjoyed it. And I'm not even thinking about, once I was doing it, leading up to it, the practice of it, I was thinking, well, they're going to edit clips for us. It's going to be good on social media, all this. I'm not even thinking about that now. I just want to deliver some world-class value on a stage to a lot of people. I'm not even thinking about it being filmed or anything like that. So that's top of the agenda for quarter one. Yeah. So we'll see.
I love that. I'm going to add one to my list of something not quite similar, but
you got to do it.
Okay. So that was your 2 main things. Is there anything else that highlights before we go into mine?
Do you know what I'll do? So there was getting out of my comfort zone. There was creating resilience, battling this internal monologue in areas where I would have panicked a few years ago that are kind of linked to the fan dance and the gym shutting and getting on stage as well. But then reconnection as well. I had 3 key areas. 1, I started dating again. 2, I reignited my passion for fixing up guitars, even if like recustomizing them and things like that. And I reconnected completely accidentally with my best mate from secondary school and ended up going to his wedding and had an amazing fucking time. Those are like my 3 key emotions, events of the previous year. And they're all kind of interlink with each other as well. It's interesting year. Interesting one.
A good year by the sound of things for you.
Can't say it was a bad one. Can't say. Still not exactly where I want to be, but I'm not stopping. I'm moving further every single fucking month, every single week. Because what else am I going to do? No one's going to do it for me.
I think for me, 2022 generally has been one of the hardest years I can remember for a very, very long time. I think starting straight into severe lockdowns here, having two police fines within the first quarter of the year, with one with for 500 quid for the mask, it just knocks you a bit. Yeah. I feel, in some ways, until the last quarter of the year, I felt very trapped that I wasn't really moving forward. I think I've learned delayed gratification more than anything else. Like consistently doing stuff and not necessarily seeing this is the right path. I found Instagram algorithms and YouTube algorithms confusing as hell. Like you do. Do you remember when we put that clip up of us doing the ghost, when you manifested the ghost, and it went as close to viral as anything had, like tens of thousands of views, multiple thousand likes, and I'm like, I've cracked it. So I did exactly the same thing, 3 likes, and I'm like, at some point then I was like, this is where I could easily give up doing stuff. Yeah, and I've had more of that battle, and I found that and like this year is where I started to realize a little bit like I felt this is the year I felt I've had probably the biggest crisis of confidence. I feel I've had the closest thing to a midlife crisis of like my priorities have changed. All the things that that gave me motivation and drive and energy many years ago is now not, and now but they're also the things that sometimes pay my bills, and that's been very difficult to handle because that's most of my day, and having to manage that. I found, getting diagnosed with ADHD and also realizing that how much of that is ADHD and how much of that is pure burnout. I went home for 6 weeks in the summer, which was amazing. I loved going home for 6 weeks, reconnecting with people, seeing family, but I came back unrefreshed. I did 2 weeks of Vietnam and I come back unrefreshed. And it was like you know, and we go into the plan for 2023 and how a lot of it is giving back to myself. This year has been a hard year where I've powered through, but there has been some positives. I think we've got the show to 10,000 downloads. We have got some big old guests, guests this year, right? Like this has been a big year for guests. We've well over 100 episodes now. I got on a couple of shows, and I can thank you for the latest referral there, which was great fun. I launched the 16-week coaching confidence course, and I've had my first call. That's technically this year, but the reviews and the feedback I'm getting has been fantastic. So that was hard work getting that already, but that's finally something that's starting to get me out of that rut now because I am moving forward in that direction I want. So I think most this year was hard. Most this year felt trapped, but I do feel that I'm starting. I don't feel right yet, but I'm powering myself in the right direction. And I think that's the most positive thing that I think is coming out of it. So moving on to 2023. I have 6, and I'm going to call them goals for 2023 and not resolutions. And the reason why I'm not calling them resolutions, because I think resolutions come with the premise of these things have to be something I can do now. And I think with me, as I said, a lot of my year was severe burnout. I just listened to Chris Williamson's recent podcast about burnout, and it was so eye-opening to me. I was like, I really hit burnout. Like, all the stages, I was like right at the end. People think burnout's like, you're a little bit tired, you've worked too hard. I'm like, people don't know real burnout until they've hit real burnout. Yeah, it's close to depression. It's a constant state of anxiety. You can't think straight. You can't work. You can't focus. You're wanting distraction. You're unmotivated for stuff. And hitting that level, where was I going with this? Just like 16. So I burnt this year. A lot of it I've realized. One of the things I realized I was burnt out is I'm normally a big fan of having a hobby is one of the best things you can do to help like low level burnout and stress.
Exactly.
And I took on a hobby. And it felt worse because it was, and it's never happened to me because I was so burnt out. No matter what it was the thing on top of everything else. It was another thing to do. It was another thing to think about. It was another reason to let myself down. So I don't want to do New Year's resolutions because I don't want to put more on my plate. I want these goals I am set here are going to be goals that I want to look back when we do this show together next year and say that I've done them. But some of them are impossible to do now.
That's good.
Some of them are possible to do now. So they sing things that are time of the year dependent, depending on something big that's happening this year. So actually, before we go into these, what's big in your diary? Because I want to finish on the goals. What's big in your diary for 2022? What have you got to look forward to?
In 23, you mean? What's in the diary?
Before goals, what is something to look for? Not goals or things we're working towards. I want to end on that. What are things that are happening this year that we have got to be excited for? So I've got some big ones, obviously, but let's...
That's a good question. I'll be brutally honest, I don't think anything's in the diary yet. There are a couple of gigs planned. As in my gigs, there are a couple of gigs planned. There are dates set for when I want to get away, but nothing's been booked. There are
August 5th, 2023. Just saying.
August 5th, 2023. That is in the diary. The quarterly events for Paul Moore. There was a couple I missed out on last year, and I hate missing out on them. They are in the diary. But that's it at the moment. Mine are more related to goals.
Yeah.
Rather than anything actually set yet. With intentions there.
So I'm as I said, as I reminded Rob and what's in his diary, I'm getting married this year, which is huge. And I am so excited for it. And like no cold feet whatsoever. This is a great thing. This has already put me in a better mood for 2023. It looks like I'm leaving Hong Kong after 4 years, which is huge. So that's a big thing. And I'm excited about some of the possibilities that come. There are some things I hate about moving back to the UK right now, especially the shitstorm that it is. But I'm looking to the positives. There were some huge things, and I'm not going to talk about them now because they go into some of my goals. But I'm excited about being in the UK. The UK has possibilities that Hong Kong doesn't. So, those things are super exciting. So, how many goals have you got written down? Are we going to alternate?
Technically, we're not going through all my goals. That would take us all day. Because technically, in the 5 areas where I have to figure out what goals I want to achieve, I've got about 10 written down for each one, minimum. So we're not doing all that. But I'll go through a couple of main ones, obviously.
So I've got 6, and we alternate, and then we just go through from there.
Perfect.
Do you want to start, considering you potentially have more?
Go on. I'll do important ones, things with stuff we can actually talk about. So one of my top priorities this year is to do something that I've been trying to do for the last 8 years, if not longer, and that's attend my first ayahuasca retreat.
Oh, wow! When you said there's things we can talk about, holy fuck!
That's what I want to do.
Oh, purely, if you thought where?
Well, ideally, in absolute ideal scenario, I would love to go South America. I'd love to go Peru. I'd love to go Amazon. Those kind of places where there is still just as much ayahuasca tourism bullshit, not safe stuff. So I have done my research, but there's a couple of reputable places in Europe.
Well, in Amsterdam, right?
There's one in Amsterdam, there's one in Portugal. What I'm trying to do there is find people who have gone, because it seems quite reputable. Everything looks safe. Nothing bad have I heard about them except for one of them. But what I'm trying to do is look through testimonials or people that have tagged themselves at these places and just try and message them and be like, talk to me. Is this the right place? Because I do feel it cool. It's something I think about a lot. I do feel it calling me a little bit. I believe there's a lot I could learn from it, and there's a lot about myself that I'm kind of refusing to learn. So I believe it will help just kind of rip the blinkers off, and I could show it to me. Where, like Clockwork Orange.
Without going into making steps and going into some of the things you obviously don't want to discuss on a public forum, what is it that drives you to ayahuasca specifically, and what is it that you kind of want to learn that you're willing to talk about, of course?
I think there's too many open. We could talk about this on another podcast. I may have joined the cult. I'm not sure yet, but I've done this thing which gives you a design. It's called human design. It's the most confusing thing I've ever looked into.
This is next week's show, by the way, and it's going to be called Rob Joined the Cult.
Probably next week's show. But basically, without going into the whole thing, part of it is it gives you like a chart based on it's kind of based on when you were born and time you were born, but also not as well. And you have a certain design, you have an aura type, you have in or out, or all these different things. But one of the things it says is related to the different chakras. And you've either got an open one, an undefined one, or a defined one. And the ones that are closed, mine are my sacral and my solar plexus. This is where I'm meant to make my decisions from. I've got an open head chakra, so an open mind, which means it's very, very open to other opinions coming in, other things filtering, changing my opinions, changing my objections, changing my focus, all sorts, which kind of feeds into the ADHD hypothesis as well, really. I'm not saying this thing is 100% correct, but it's just a rabbit hole I'm down at the moment. And what I've always thought about with ayahuasca is there are areas of my life where I know the ego's taken over and I don't really truly know who I am or what I actually want. And from what I've heard from other people who have done it, they say that's one thing and one area where it's really kind of helped them is just rip the curtains open and show them what they're doing wrong, what they need to do differently. So just several things that have happened over the last couple of years, and I thought, well, that could be the answer. Could still be the answer. And plus, I love the psychedelic experience as well. I haven't had one for a while, so that's
interesting. So my first one is, I called it start a daily journal, but it's not going to be daily. But it's not what you think. I want to start a daily journal on YouTube. It won't entirely be daily. I'm not entirely sure of the way of doing it, but I want it to be initially an unedited webcam where I record top 2 lessons from each day, daily thoughts and wonderings,
Sweet.
as well as things like upcoming podcast interviews, courses, reflections from past shows, life lessons. And I've even come up to like, I might even balance them between YouTube and Instagram lives, so people have to go to both if they want to keep up with it. But I had things like episode 1 was talk about the goals of this and just talk about the reason why I want to do this so I can share my unfiltered opinions. Cool. And I will say in the episode that you may like some of these, you may not like some of these, and that's fine because I want to show on the internet that people are more well-rounded than you think. I'm going into my life lessons from 2022. The stuff that I put on Instagram, but in more detail. I'm doing one. Episode 4. I've written the first 5 episodes out what topics I want to talk about, and then I'll just go into the dailies. Episode 4 was that it sounds really depressing, but there's a reason it's not as depressing as it sounds. I'm 32 and have no friends. Now, the reason why I'm calling it that, because that's not technically true. I have lots of friends. I'm speaking to one. That's slightly YouTube algorithm friendly. Have you seen one of these videos come up of I'm 18, have no friends, I'm 40, have no friends? Someone did a video, and I don't know why this ended up in my algorithm, but I thought this is a weird thing. Like that's a weird thing to say. And I did it, and then literally the suggestions were all people of different ages that said the same thing. And this one woman apparently did a video about her feeling like she didn't have any friends in her adulthood, and she just did this video, open and honest video, and they go mental. They're millions of views. So I want to title it that. Because it might go crazy, but the talking point is I want to discuss how friendship circles get smaller over time, and no one tells you about this. You look online, you look on media, you look on you watch Friends, right? You all have this close knit big friendship circle that live around the corner from each other, that do everything together, and you grow up in this life thinking you should have as many friends as you have in school, and you realize some friends are just in your life for a small period of time. Some friends you grow apart from when you move different places and move countries. Yeah. And if you're ambitious, that's doubly true because you move, like me, across the planet. And no one talks about friendship circles getting smaller. And when everyone looking at this now, they think, that's not true, Simon, you're full of shit. 90% of you look at your parents. They're all interesting people. They're all totally popular people in their past, and I bet 90% of the stuff they do is just together, and their lives are them, and maybe a couple of friends here or there. Yeah, and that's the way the world comes for most people, and no one discusses it. So that's one I have. No. And then number 5 is dealing with burnout and what I'm doing. That's cool. So that's my number 1 is to have a semi-regular, not sure because I haven't started yet, but when I do, a semi-regular YouTube show where it's unedited because I don't want to add stuff to my diary. It's going to be unedited until I am in a position where I can add more to my plate. I don't want to add a daily video pressure, but it'll be like a more regular chat to camera. Putting my views out there, not giving a shit what anyone thinks, just seeing what happens.
I like that. That's cool. I'll keep you accountable as well. I like that.
This is inspired by a little bit of Coffee with Stefan, the Kilo Strength. He did the Coffee with Stefan. And there was Coffee Thoughts, the girl Pearl, it's the sort of the red pill woman. She does those. It's just her chatting. I thought, that's a good idea. I'm going to do it like in a journal format, and I'm going to frame it as my open and honest thoughts, and then you can get the edit podcast stuff.
Like it.
What's your second?
Second, we've kind of touched on it already. Fan dance is definitely up there. Repeating that. If not, or whether I do or don't repeat that, I want to climb up 3 other mountains as well.
Do you want to do a 3-peak challenge?
Potentially. I'm looking into it. And I got this is related to something else as well. I got an email from I'm trying to, this is so weird, right? Again, but I am weird. People should know that by now. Every now and then I think like something I receive is like a little sign that I need to respond to. I've signed up for a charity challenge in February, and I signed up to it in the last 24 hours, and I can't remember how I signed up to it or where I saw the advert at all. But it's a push-up challenge for shelter in February. It's like 2,800 push-ups throughout February. It's like 100 a day. It's doable, but it's going to be tough. Consistency is going to be the biggest thing there more than anything, and making sure my shoulders don't get fucked. But then I signed up to that. I was like, that's cool, because I want to do 3 charitable events this year. I remembered I got an email from Macmillan, and I'm not even on Macmillan's email list. I got an email from Macmillan about one of 3 mountain climbs, doing it for Macmillan. I'm like, ooh. And then I'm also thinking about doing the fan dance. I could do that for charity. I don't need to do it for financial gain. There is no financial gain. Why not do it for charity as well if I'm going to get other people involved? So I thought, well, maybe Free Peaks. Why would you do Free Peaks without doing it for some sort of charitable event as well? Why would you put yourself through that? So that's one of the big things. So let's say that more than the fan dance, because the fan dance I would do for charity too. So 3 big charitable events, mainly based around endurance, I'd say, because strength's an easy one. That's in my comfort zone.
Yeah.
No one would be motivated by that.
I'm very driven, very, very driven to do a longer thing again. Because I think the unique. When I got to the boys on at Road the Atlantic, right, and one of the overwhelming things, the vibes I got from them is how close they were, and the stories of just having we've talked about dopamine detoxes so often on this show. It's a forced dopamine detox where you're doing something interesting and you're forced to just enjoy the moment because you can't do anything else. Like I was listening to that podcast about burnout earlier. And while they're talking about dopamine detoxing, he was talking like, he sorted out his receipts, he did these jobs around the house because he's got these other things to do. And while cool, you're getting stuff done, that's not the point of a dopamine detox. But if you're in the middle of the Atlantic on a boat, you've just got that's just something that. And I'm not saying I want to do that, but like walking the length of Wales again, or doing coast to coast, or something like that with a mate that I'm not going to feel that's not going to bail on me. If you're keen, because I don't think you would bail. You've always said you've got that inner voice that gets you through.
Yeah, exactly.
But I can chat to, which we're on a podcast together, so we obviously have stuff to chat about. It would be so interesting at some point, like to do that again. It's been a long time. That's one of the most unique experience of my life. My second one,
I like that. After
having Kieran on the show, I have signed up to Total Mental Performance Therapy.
Nice.
So my second one is literally just go through the program and take action on the needed tasks before I sign to any more mentorships. I went on after this and I was looking at this. It's like, it's not the cheapest therapy on offer, but it's not anywhere near as expensive as I thought. And I went and looked and I went, they are, the problem I've had with therapy that I've done before, and again, not enough, is I just find it not wishy-washy, but I just felt it wasn't, they didn't, as soon as I talk about my problems and struggles in business, they had no idea. And I got, just do Tai Chi and tap your head and then tap your neck. And I'm not saying that's not valid, but what I'm saying is like, these guys work with coaches. They work with people that understand the things. And I looked at their testimonials and so many people are my friends. So many people I've mentored that have gone on to be financially more successful than me. Cool. I'm like, I need to do that. So that is my goal, and that starts in February. That's my those first two are my quickest ones.
That's cool.
My most recent ones. Well, actually, maybe the most immediate ones. What's your next one?
I like that. So I've done one related to the ayahuasca. This is how we do it with Paul Moore. It's 5 areas, 5 Fs. You have focus, fitness, family, finance, and fun. Focus is normally related to putting yourself out of your comfort zone, or something that increases confidence, or something that kind of elevates your level of focus. So it could be skydive, it could be public speaking, it could be X amount of minutes of meditation, something like that. So that's where my ayahuasca one's gone. The charitable events are all fitness related, so that's gone in my fitness. Then there's family. Now, again, I kind of put the charitable thing in here as well because it's all based on positive impact. But what I want to do, top of my family list, is I want to make my parents financially secure if shit hits the fan. That's what I want to do. Put myself in a financial position where I can give back to the people that have given me more than anyone else ever, and put them in a position where if the government decides to really double down on making people's lives worse, they won't end up in that position. How I do that exactly, I don't know yet. But that's the point of goal setting. You can't have it all. If you've got it exactly figured out how you're going to do it, why haven't you done it? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree with that. My next one's the one we won't talk about quite as much. But my goal with my training, as I said, my priority change, and I find that bodybuilding training these days highlights where areas in my life where I'm rubbish. My pains, my aches, my mobility issues, and I'm like, it's always been, I'm just trying to plug it into bodybuilding rather than giving it a focus. So I want to focus the first 6 weeks on really trying to work on improving my mobility and getting there. So, but I've also got a wedding to come to, right? So I want to get myself back in shape. When I say get back in shape, I mean sub 12%.
Cool.
My view of shape has always been like 5-6% body fat, right?
Yeah.
I want to redefine where that level is for me. It doesn't mean I won't hit 8 to 10% body fat again this year, but I don't want to have this goal that I need to get DSL.
Sweet.
Thick skin lean for people that don't know what that means.
I like that.
So I want to get some trouble before the wedding, but I also have tagged onto this. I want a strict overhead press of 40 kg. It's not huge, but I don't have that range. So when I say strict, that means I don't have lumbar extension. I want a strict there, and if it's even physically possible. But I want to look at where my passive range is, and I want to get as close to that as humanly possible. So if it's not 100% overhead, it is my limit. It's not the excuse of.
I like that.
It's not excuse of joint sockets when I don't have an X-ray.
I
and
like
100 kilo comfortable deep squat.
Come on.
Which will be safety bar, because I've had Michael Goulden test my shoulders. I don't have that's not improving. So it will have to be safety, but I want to be able to get into that bottom of the squat position in my axe range, which is just about a bit below 90, comfortably with a brace.
Cool. That's cool. Well, I'm similar there as well. So I toy between, do I want to just try and get a little bit bigger, or do I want to get DSL again? And I always end up leaning towards the DSL, but I don't know. But I have to think about function and fun in my training, because last year I trained consistently, but there were points of it where I didn't enjoy it. So I have to make sure that I'm still enjoying it. In terms of function, the worst my back has actually been for as long as I've had back issues was at the start of last year. Chances of me deadlifting again is probably not worth it. So I have to let that ego trip disappear. I'm not going to be a heavy deadlifter. I have to let the ego disappear on how much I used to squat and tell myself, well, I'm never going to do that again, because I don't need to do that again. But where can I present myself a physical challenge that does involve heavy weights, which motivates me and gives me severe dopamine release? On my exact list, I've put 100 kilo on the pendulum for 6, because that's something I never did. I never did that.
2 months' time, we're getting a pendulum squat. It's the Watson one, not the complete rubbish one. It's the one that does have a counterweight and you can play the football around. Yeah. I don't know if they're any good. I don't like Watson pendulum squats normally, but I think this is slightly better. But we are getting one, so I'm excited for that.
That's cool. Can't wait. That's in my first quarter as well, so I might have bitten off more than I can chew there.
Yeah, I'm giving myself the year. What is your next one?
So what do we do? Now we'll do finance area. One thing that I started last year was my email marketing agency, and I did not hit the financial targets that I set myself. So it's as simple as that. It's not hit the financial targets, it's do the work behind the scenes that's going to get me to the financial targets, which consistently on the 5th of January, I've done every single day this week so far. So I've just got to keep doing that.
I like that, because it's like the financial targets are not in your control necessarily, but the actions that push you towards them are.
Exactly.
So I love that. Number 4 for me is a fairly more recent one. It's my 5 and 6 are the most exciting ones. They're maybe my next direction in life ones. But the first one is number 4 is achieve a successful first intake of the coaching confidence course, which is off to a good start, and release either a level 2 or, and I'm leaning towards this, or a yearly graduates program that is a rolling cost. So that adds an extra discussion group where we do like more case studies.
Sweet.
You continue the one-to-one mentoring once per month if people like that accountability to the clients, and then you get every future intake of the course for free.
Nice.
Technically, because you're kind of paying for them, but you're not paying any extra to do it again. So you can retake it as many times as you like.
Get it. Love it.
So it's like an inner circle.
That's cool.
So I might call it the self-made coach. The inner circle. So that's my number 4.
That's cool. I like that. Then it's fun, the fun area. This is where you can just go wild. I've got 2 big ones in this one. One of which is so it's going to be tough to get my band playing as regularly as we used to, because 2 of them have kids, 2 of them involved with bands with busier schedules, and everyone works. So maybe those days are gone, right? But that doesn't mean I can't do my own stuff. So I want to record this year a minimum of 4 to 5 separate EPs of my stuff, utilizing other musicians, of course. And I know several people that will be very, very happy to do so. That's my biggest goal.
That's so cool.
Get that done. Because something that I noticed over the last couple of years that really increased the amount of anxiety, depression, and lack of focus was I had no creative output outside of work. So, okay, it's cool. I like creating resources. I like creating things for my clients. I like doing that sort of stuff. But that's not really creative output when I'm an emotionally creative person. And
For me, it's this.
Exactly.
That's what this is.
And the bigger, like, with no financial gain, you could still keep this going. And that's the same thing for me with my music. I don't care if anyone buys it or not. I want to record it for me and put it out there, because why the hell wouldn't I put it out there? It might bring someone some happiness. It might not. That's not the point. Without that creative output, I'm at my worst. Why wouldn't I? I'll double down on this. Oh, mate, everyone's going to get it for free anyway. I'm putting up for
Yeah. Like, what is even the process of making an EP? Is it a complicated thing?
Well, once you've got your songs written, you have options. So I know some people that have their own little home studios, or you go and pay for some studio time, and the studio will produce it for you if you're going to the right place. Cool. So then it's a case of, let's say I was just doing a completely solo thing. I'd take my guitar, go to the studio to record. We'd lay down a rough track first, so then I can play my guitar properly along to the track, and then I can then do my vocals along to the proper guitar track, or whatever you're doing. You can do extra bits on top. They will then master it for you, get all the levels sounding right. You can be as involved in that process as you want, and then you get your audio files, and then it's on you to what do you want to do with them.
Do you rate yourself more as a guitarist or a singer?
Nah, neither. But I rate myself as a creative person that I think has the ability to write some memorable songs. I don't want to sound like an arsehole, but I'm going to. I think there are a lot of bands out there on the amateur level that seem to get very, very frustrated and take things way too seriously, without ever realizing I'm actually that good. You know, I play and I'm going to record the type of stuff that I like listening to, and it's going to be 3-4 different projects, completely different genres as well. I want to play the stuff that I like listening to, and the songs that go round in my head that I've created a lot. I just want to do it to get it out of my head, if anything, and put it on a digital or a physical platform. We will see. And then just put it out there for the world, if the world wants to hear it. And I mean the world, I just mean putting the signal out there. I don't mean it's going to go famous or global or anything like that, because I'm quite realistic about this stuff. I know it's not. I know it's quite niche. But I have to do it, you know? The second fun one is I have to. It's one of my lifelong goals, and I've still not even got close to doing it. I have to spend a week in December in New York. I have to do Christmas in New York. I have to.
I like that.
And I beat myself up every year that I still ain't done it. So
yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's on my list as well. Like, it's interesting you say that about the music thing. Like, this is not necessarily my goals for this year, but it's something I've always toyed with. Either getting piano lessons, or because all my family play piano, right, and they're very good, very, very good, except my mum and me.
Okay.
And ever since my uncle died, who was the best out of all of us. My grandmother was a piano teacher. He was a piano teacher. He was exceptional, and he did this Fragments of Braveheart piano, which is actually an unlisted video on YouTube. I'll send you it. It's incredible. And I've always said I wanted to play it.
Love it.
Which will make all my family cry. I'm very sad, but it's worth it. Yeah. I just think it's beautiful.
Do it.
Or learn to sing. Like, go and get lessons.
Yeah.
Because as growing up, I was a very good singer. Sang at the Birmingham Symphony Hall in front of 1,000 people. And then my voice broke and I stopped doing it. And like, you know, and I, without sounding arrogant, I'm not terrible. Like, I sound like a person that's, I think, who knows, maybe ask Ellie. I sound like the person that's going to hit the occasional note. I've got raw materials there, but I'm just very unpracticed. So I'm pretty shit. Yeah. I'm pretty shit by my own default, not by I'm just bad. Like, it's because I've never done it properly. So I would like to do that. That's something. It's not necessarily a this year thing necessarily, but it's a sometime thing that eventually I will put a deadline on it. But it's not the priority this year.
That's a good one.
My next two are the big ones, and I'm going to leave one particularly for the last one.
Sweet.
This is one I've been thinking about for a while, and I didn't think about, and it's I've actually just added it now. It's one I typed earlier, and it's the first of the two that are only available to happen when I come back to the UK. I've got a name in here, but I know a few people. But in particular, I'm going to talk to Chris Bavin. Do you know who Chris Bavin is? He's on many shows. Eat Well for Less. he was a presenter of. He's done a lot of the food presenter stuff. He's done some cooking shows. He's been on the podcast. So I know Chris from when I did Food, Truth or Scare, which he presented, and I was on the BBC presenting with him. And it was about red meat, and they edited the fuck out of me and like all that, like BBC like do, right? And I remember him having a chat afterwards. He was like, "I've very rarely did we get somebody on that doesn't need editing much. I got one. I messed up one take in the whole day, and it was because I mentioned McDonald's and you can't mention brand names. And I loved the experience. Sweet. I loved it, and I've always liked the idea of pushing myself out my comfort zone. So when I come back to the UK or when I run up, I'm gonna message Chris Bavin and my friend Paddy, who does production and film for TV, about potential ways of getting some TV roles. Whether that starts as like there's a website I know where you can apply to be like when an expert. So when This Morning need a health guy, they go down this and go, look at this is his credentials. Love it. And that's where it would potentially start. But speak to him about like, how do I do what you do? How do I do these TV shows about food and health and things like this, and get into that world a bit? That's cool. And that's scary, but it's what I think I'll be. I think I could do it well if I have the right guidance, support, and connections.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Take advantage of them, you know. It's the whole point of a network, really, isn't it? You know?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how well I know them and how possible this is and how much pull he has, but at least he can put me in the right direction.
Love it. That's a good one, man. That's a good one.
So I've got one more. What you got?
Let me find one more. I'll do the fun one because then it's not too. I'll do another fun one because it's not too personal. It's not too boring for people either. I don't know if you've ever seen The Trip with Steve Coogan and Robb Brydon. And Steve Coogan's one of my favourite people on the planet because of Alan Partridge. Mm-hmm. And basically they play themselves, but pastiches of themselves. And what they do in the first season is they're driving across the north of England, and every episode they go to this different restaurant, like a real restaurant. They're all places you can go to. So it's a bit about the food, it's a bit about them, it's a bit about the area, but it's very, very funny as well.
Sorry to cut you off, but you'll understand when I do mine. I'm so glad you said this, and I'll talk about this in my number 5.
That's right. But the second season, they do Italy. They do this road trip across parts of Italy. And I've 2 goals. One of which is to do something I haven't done for a while, but all in the interest of recovery, is every quarter try and get away. Because just coming up to each quarterly event before more, I'm knackered. And just after each event, I'm knackered. And he notes this as well. So I want to try and give myself something recovery-based every single quarter. But I do want to push myself to do things a little bit bigger as well. So that's one of the things, is to recreate as much of the trip to Italy as I can within my budget and time constraints. That's my last one.
So my last one is kind of half dependent on you. You could shoot this one down immediately. But based on what you just said, I don't think you will. So, have you heard of the YouTube channel? Well, you've heard of Mind Pump, right?
Okay, yeah.
Have you heard of the YouTube channel What Culture?
No.
So, What Culture, they started off as a film channel, like film and TV, and now they've branched off into loads. They have film and TV, they have the UFC one, they have a comics, they have a horror. But the big one, there's a What Culture horror, you like it. It's mainly list videos, but quite fun list videos. Okay. And the pro wrestling one, I think it's a bit rubbish now, went crazy popular about 7 or 8 years ago. And the main reason it has is because and this is nothing about pro wrestling in my thing, but I'm setting the scene. They have this cast, the right people came along at the right time. This cast of people that were charismatic, that were interesting, and they started doing these prediction videos where they predicted wrestling pay-per-views, and they all did forfeits, like have a choke slam, get chopped, and they just built and built and built. There was one where they did this horrendous chili sauce, right? And it was like horrendous. It was just, and you just got these things where like, some of it was serious about reviewing the news of the wrestling and the reactions, and some of it was that stuff, but some of it was just fun, and people tuned in half for the information they got and half for the characters. So, my number 5, which is the thing I want to do at the back end of this year, is to start a live podcast show. Either a homemade studio or a rented studio when I move back to the UK. Perhaps a What Culture / Mind Pump style YouTube show with Rob. With challenges, forfeits, reviews, and more. So the four, like, these are reviews, can be reviews of, like, do a video reviewing shit gym fads or, like, exercise. They're like my book. Like, it could be informative. It doesn't have to be silly all the time, right?
Yeah,
and I wouldn't want it to be silly all the time. It's like people come to learn, but they stay for us.
Okay.
And these can be strength challenges, endurance challenges, rep challenges, etc. Like a Robb versus Simon series that all have a forfeit at the end. By the way, I didn't have time. I did plan to get raw liver on the way home. I will for next week.
We'll do that.
But also,
this
is the second part of this. And this is the bit where I think you'll like it. There's a reason why I was so glad you said the last one. This would also include documentaries that are a mix of serious documentaries. For example, a men's mental health documentary.
Love it. Cool.
Or fun, such as health food tours of the world. Like going to different countries and going, this is what people eat to be healthy. Let's try the food. Top Gear style shows, when they do the fun, silly things, but with a fitness slant. I don't know how that would work, but with a fitness slant. It could be the health food tour, but make it fun. Or I had another one. So we had documentaries, and then just sort of and I added in when you talk about your live tour, and then do a live talk on stage, both of us. So if you're keen on that, that is potentially a non-exclusive business idea. Now you can still copyright and all those things, but try and make this make a fucking media empire. If you're keen to start that when I come back, this is my potential offer collaboration.
Yeah, I'm up for this. That's an intriguing concept, but I like it. I think maybe that is the future of podcasting as well. These live studio ones, because they seem to have, a handful of them, doubled down in popularity over the last few months, including Chris Williamson doing filmed ones now as well. Maybe that is the future. But
I also think, and this is what I like about this, right? I always had the idea of like London Real before we went mad. I loved the documentaries they did, like Art of Portal.
Yeah.
I look at that walk culture thing, and I look at the way Mind Pump does, and Mind Pump are the closest thing to this. But fitness YouTube channels are fucking boring.
So boring, man.
So boring. Like they're like don't wrong. Some of the characters are interesting and the podcasts are interesting, but that is all it is. And I'm like, this needs to be more than the podcast. This needs to be more than chatting. People stay. People like us ranting for 90 minutes once a week. And me ranting. I mean, Steve, I would include Steve in this, by the way. Shout out to Steve, but he lives in Australia and I don't think he's moving back, so that's quite tricky to do. Otherwise, I would join him in this too. Yeah. But the podcast will be the bread and butter. But it's like I just feel there is so much more personality you can make in this. Part of fitness that gets lost in the moment arms and the reverse band is fun, and having the element of a bit back of Monday and Thursday could be a podcast show, but like Tuesday and Friday could be like pull-up challenge or a bench press challenge, and the loser does something. It's like Simon versus Robb with the forfeit show coming later in that day. So there's a community feel to the channel where people come because they like the interplay between us, and then they stay for then they have the knowledge and interviews and things like that. I just think no one does that. People do that in entertainment style media channels. Yeah, but fitness is still too serious all the fucking time. And I just I think there needs to be something more interesting in it.
Totally, yeah, I get that. Totally. It's the industry now is running the risk of becoming the most boring industry out there, which is why it's gone through this weird clickbait phase that seems to have died down a little bit, even though Stephen Bartlett's podcast nearly brought it back. And now you've just got people going too much on the biomechanics thing, which is important, but you've also got now the other side of the spectrum is this almost pure egotistical attention seeking. It's no longer fitness, it's me. It's about me. So I'm going to do slow-mo videos of me training with the perfect filter on and, an aggressive soundtrack in the background and motivational messages everywhere. Like I'm the warrior king or queen. And it's about me. It's not about fitness anymore. And half of these people aren't even in that phenomenal shape to be doing that. It's pure ego now. But that's what some people go for as well. But it does mean the fun side's disappearing.
And I also think there's elements that intimidates people that want to come up. If you look at this, taking on coaching clients, but also like there's a great channel called The Kilted Coaches. There are two fitness trainers that wear kilts all the time and talk about this. And they similar to how to wear a kilt on the channel and things like this. And they're just quite fun. They're just two great mates. But I even would like if that idea works well and becomes a media company, it was a business in itself, we could add 3, 4, 5 trainers. But the whole thing is like, it's not only like boring, but it's also like it's often one man bands. It's often just it's people that don't have, but there's nothing else about them other than the gym.
Yeah,
and I'm like, most people aren't like that. Like we both see benefits of ice baths. Jump in one, who gets out first? That's another challenge. Like just silly stuff like that.
exactly.
And I think there's so much scope of making almost a bit of a media production company based around fitness that has comedy shows, health shows, serious documentaries, fun, and be a proper channel rather than, okay, I want to learn how to do a split squat, YouTube split squat.
Yeah, exactly. It's true, man. That's a good goal. That's good.
Well, we'll plan that over the next 6 months before I come home and we'll have a look. But awesome, man. I'm really looking forward to seeing, but I'm going to come back and watch the show for sure to have a look at where things have gone. So for people that want to see your goals, I mean, you've got 2 businesses sort of running on the go here. Which one's the one that's going to take off?
Who knows? Who knows? I mean, to be fair, my copywriting thing is not something I want to be. Well, I don't know if you guys follow Mike Samuels, but I'm not trying to be a personality with it. I'm trying to provide value to businesses and coaches and clients. And it's something I enjoy doing. I can't imagine I'll get to a point where my business now becomes, this is how you email market, this is how you copyright and things like that. I want to work one-to-one with people, really. And it will help me eventually, once I decide what I am doing with my one-to-one PT, it will help me become fully remote. But the fast lane's still the thing. That's the thing where I can have the most amount of impact in the world, help the most amount of people, and, fill my need for attention at the same time. That's the thing.
Love it, man. Pleasure as always, man. Good to be back doing these. I'll speak to you next week.
Plenty more coming.
Hey guys, thank you very much for watching the podcast. If you're like me and like to binge watch podcast episodes, click here for our most recent episode. And if you enjoy the show and want to be updated when new videos come live, click here to subscribe to the channel.